But I want to deal with a topic tonight. Are you ready for this? Me and my big mouth. Me and my big mouth. And this is where we're going with this tonight. What we need to understand before we go any further is I want to break this down for the next several weeks. And I want to begin talking about our mouth. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but I got in trouble, John, many times with my mouth. Believe it or not, I did. Growing up as a kid, if I got in trouble, it was because of my mouth. I got in trouble as a teenager because of my mouth. I get in trouble today as an adult most of the time because of, y'all are not supposed to say that. Y'all are not supposed to say, I'm your pastor. I'm your shepherd, okay? And but one thing that we've got to understand is that there is such power in the words that we speak. Before we go any further, before we get into the word, there has to be an understanding for all of us that there is power in the words that we speak. Our words have the power to give life, and our words also have the power to take life. Jesus said it like this. He said, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth will speak. All right, so tonight what I want to do is I want to talk about the problem of the mouth. Now, I want to break it down because tonight I want to talk about, are you ready for this? I want to talk about complaining. Complaining. Think about it now. I want to talk about complaining. Some of you are slumping down in your seat already. Oh, Lord, here he goes. Some of you are already thinking right now, this don't pertain to me. Yes, it does. And everybody knows it does. Some of you are thinking right now, well, this is not spiritual. Not according to the word of God, it is. So I want to look at about complaining. When I think about complaining in the Bible, the first place that my mind goes back to is in the Old Testament. So to think about God's chosen people. All right, you can go back and you can look at the story of the Israelites who when they were in captivity as slaves for hundreds and hundreds of years, what is the one thing they did? They complained. Everybody say they complained. They were complainers. If there were complaints, they complained about everything. When God did miracle after miracle after miracle, he issued 10 different miraculous plagues to turn the heart of Pharaoh. He parted the Red Sea. He drowned Pharaoh's army. He fed God's people with bread from heaven. He provided water from rocks. Their clothes never gave out. I mean, how great is that? They never gave out. Their shoes never gave out. We look at it today. Listen, their jeans were in better condition than what most people wear their jeans in today. I just have a question. Do y'all cut them that way, or do you just you just make them that way? I don't know. I hadn't figured that one out yet, but okay. All right. But I was just thinking, how many times God just provided for them, and God took care of them, and God blessed them. What did God's people do when they saw miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle? They griped. They griped and they complained. They whined and they continue to complain. Think about this. In Exodus chapter 14, verse 11, when they said to Moses, was it because there was no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? Stop there. Moses just brought you out of Egypt, where you were slaves, where you were slaves to Egyptian bondage. And the only thing you have to say is, what did you do this for? You brought us out of Egypt into the desert to die because what? There's no graves in Egypt? I don't know if it was a lot of us, we might say, turn yourself around and march yourself right back. You will appreciate what I've done for you, but no, matter of fact, you can read later on when they complained and their lips were busting and cracking, and their tongues were swelling. They were dying. They were dehydrating. They came to a place, and finally they were talking. They said, "We're so thirsty, and we just want water." Moses was to the point in his life. He said, "I am sick and tired of hearing their complaints." As a matter of fact, this is where it ended for Moses. When Moses lifted up his rod, the Bible says that he was supposed to touch the rock, but instead he went crazy on the rock, and he began to beat the rock, and he began to tell the people, "You want water, you bunch of ungrateful people? I'll give you water." He began to go off on that. He went from an F1 to an F5 in split seconds. Why? Because he was tired of hearing their complaints. He was tired of hearing them whine and gripe and complain about every little thing. Does anybody know somebody like that? Don't point, don't point. Sure you do. But they go on, the Israelites, and they said, "What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? We were so happy when we were slaves." Really? "But now you brought us out of there. Didn't we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone. Let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." Now, tonight, what I want you to do for the next few moments is I want you to help me personalize this story. I want you to help me personalize this for you and myself, so that you'll hear the message through the lens of your own complaining. All right? And I want you to ask, all right, tonight, I want to ask you, what is it that you complain about the most? What is it that you complain about the most? Think about it. I don't want to hear it. Think about it. Think about it. Who in here would say, "I'm a complainer"? I'll admit it. I'm a complainer. Come on. Anybody? Anybody want to be honest? Sammy, you want to be honest? Here, Sammy, you get to wear the big mouth for tonight, okay? You wear the big mouth, all right? You're the complainer for the night, all right? If I had a few more of those, I'll pass them around too, but that's the only one I got, okay? It's just, it is what it is. Don't go to sleep on me tonight now. But the truth is, we're all a little guilty of complaining about some things every now and then, right? And so tonight I want you to personalize and looking through the lens of your own complaining. Think about what is it that you complain about in life the most? The most. I want you to think about and be real honest. And now I want you to go ahead and I want you to clarify this, and I hope that you'll understand that the problem people complain about, it's too cold. People complain about, summer's too hot. People complain about, the temperature. People complain about the traffic. The people complain that there's not a Netflix hasn't come out with a new original content that meets your approval rating. You complain about the TV, that there's not a good show on. We complain, there's not a good movie out anymore. We complain about everything you can imagine. Probably today, if you would be honest, you complained about something. Think about it. Probably today, probably tonight, even walking in here tonight, if you'll be honest, you may, not all of you, but you may have complained about something. Tomorrow, you probably are going to get up, and throughout the day, you're going to probably, and I hope that you catch yourself, complain about something you don't like, something that needs to be different. It's going to go all the way Friday and Saturday. Listen, Sunday's a glorious day. It's a day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. But there'll be people that come in here and complain. People will find something to complain about. People will find something to get mad about. We got home group Sunday night. Home group Sunday night. Find your home group. Go to your home group. I'll ask around afterwards who's serving what, but it's okay. We'll do that later. But bread, somebody will complain. It happened. It happened. It is the way it is. Somebody will complain about something and not going the way that they like it or whatever. The problem is this, folks. The problem is that we have taken our eyes off of the goodness of God and we placed our eyes dead center on ourselves. That's where complaining comes from. We've taken our eyes, I'll say it again, we've taken our eyes off of the goodness of God and we placed it dead center on ourselves. 9 times out of 10, what you're complaining about, nobody else is complaining about it but you. So therefore, that they are seeing that if we can open our eyes and realize, you know what, God's been good to me. There's people that they have to get in traffic just like many of you have to get in traffic. And you know what they're thinking? They're not thinking anything about complain about the traffic. There may be some of them saying, Lord, I thank you. I got a nice warm car this morning, and I got a heater on this morning, and I can heat my seats this morning. My kids don't like to ride with me. They want to ride with their mom because their seats get heated. The steering wheel gets heated. So now I'm kind of enjoying driving her car. I'm just asking you if you want to switch or something on cold mornings. And that went poof, real quick. And so, but people, they take their eyes off of what God has blessed them with, and they put their eyes straight on themselves, and therefore that is the reason that they're complaining. That is the problem that leads to a constant curse of complaining. The number one desire of Paul, when I begin to read about Paul, the Apostle Paul, the number one desire of Paul's heart was to go to Rome and be a preacher. That's what Paul wanted in life. He wanted to go to Rome and be a preacher, to go to Rome and to communicate and tell the people, preach the gospel. And he knew that if he could go to Rome and reach the leaders in Rome, that he could have a chance of impacting the whole world. And at the top of his list of things that he wanted to accomplish in life was to go to Rome as a preacher. But instead, he was arrested. He was sent to Rome as a prisoner. Now, I want you to think about that for just a moment. That was not the way that Paul wanted it. That was not the desire of Paul. Paul said, but Lord, you don't understand. I desire to go be a preacher. I desire to go and tell the authorities of Rome about your goodness and about who you are and to preach to them. But instead, I find myself in a prison. See, the dream is a preacher, but instead, he's a prisoner now. Now, I want you to think about what may be racing through his mind during this time. Not just a prisoner. He was locked up for 2 years, locked up 24 hours a day, chained to a different Roman guard, awaiting his very possible execution. And I'll tell you right now, I'll be the first one to be honest tonight, that I would think to myself, wait a minute, this isn't fair, God. I will be full of complaints. I would tell God how I feel. I would let God know, why are you allowing this to happen? I would tell God that I would remind God that I serve you. I've been faithful to you. If I'm the Apostle Paul and I've been shipwrecked and I've been beaten and I've been snake bitten and I've been left for dead, and all I've done to deserve, all I've done is serve you and serve you and serve you. You now have a place that I can go into and win many people to Christ. If you just give me a shot at this city, give me favor with this city, I'll make an impact in this city here. We can make a difference here. Instead, Paul says, I'm a prisoner. If things would just go a little bit different than what they are right now. How many of you would agree and say, you know what? Looking at Paul's life, Paul had a reason to complain. Right? If anybody had a reason to complain, it's Paul. I would think if I was Paul, but God, you don't understand. The floor's hard. The food is bad. These Roman soldiers' body odor is tough that I'm chained to. These guys smell. These guys are horrible. It makes me want to puke even on him right now. This is disgusting. God, it's just not fair, God. It's not fair. I can hear Paul. I want to hear Paul say these things, but I'm not hearing Paul say any of these. I'm thinking these things to myself. That's kind of what would be going through my mind. Instead of complaining, though, instead of whining, instead of telling God why God got it all wrong, this is what the Apostle Paul penned in a letter to the Christians in Philippi. Here's what he said in Philippians 2, verse 14. Paul said this. He said to the Philippian believer, he said, do everything without grumbling or complaining. What? Paul, this makes no sense, man. Look where you're at in life. And he writes this, do everything without grumbling, without complaining. Another version translates it this way and says, do everything without complaining. And that's, listen, how many of you know that's a very high standard there that Paul has just said, whatever you do, wherever you are, whatever deed, whatever word, do everything without grumbling or complaining. I was reading the other day that there's a doctor named Dr. Travis Bradberry. He wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. He's done a lot of research on the idea of complaining. And what he says is that repeated complaining hardwires the brain to do, guess what? More complaining. It didn't take a doctor to come up with that, but it's true. He said, I've studied the brain enough, and I've realized that people who repeat complaining and on, you hardwire the brain. You're telling the brain that, you know what? Everything in life, it's about me. Put the focus on me. That if I don't like it, I'm going to complain about it. If I don't want this, I'm going to complain about it. If this is not my cup of tea, I'm going to let everybody know. I'm going to complain about it. And so he said that the brain is getting hardwired. Listen, this was the problem with the Israelites. They were negative when they were in captivity. They were negative in Egypt. They were negative. They were complaining. It's too hot out here. These rocks are too heavy. This work is too hard. And then when they got out of Egypt, what's the very first thing they begin to do? Complain. Why? Because their brain got hardwired into thinking the worst about everything. They were negative when they were free because their negative mindsets trained them to be even more negative. And incredibly, it's a dangerous place to get into. Paul essentially, with the way that he lived and what he would have taught, very likely would have said something like this. He would say, if you can change your circumstance, if there is something negative you can do something about it, then do something about it. Paul would tell us that today. The thing that you complain about, if there's something you can do about it, do something about it. If there are negative circumstances, something that is unpleasant in life, something that is not right, something that you wish you could change, and you can do something about it, then do something about it. So in other words, we're not going to go through life and pretend that everything is okay when it's not okay. Listen, it's not a sin to notice that something is not right. It's not a sin to notice. It's not even a sin. You know, there's things, man, and now raising a teenager, there's things that I think to myself, this is stupid. I don't like it. I don't like flat bill hats. Hats are not supposed to be flat bill. They're supposed to bend, right? Don't tell my teenager that though. They go in their ear. The hat goes over their ear now. And but it's just what they do. Can I do something about it? Well, you know what? Yeah, I make fun of him all the time. All the time. When it's hat day and I say, son, go get a hat. And he comes out of the flat, go get another hat. We're not going to school unless you get another hat. Go get another hat. This is a hat I want to wear. Huh? This is a hat. This is a cool hat. Get another hat. I think he probably stuffs the other hat in his backpack or something. Brings it out. You know what? There's some things in life that, listen, I'm not going to agree with. The older I get, I can already tell you there's some things about music I'm not going to get. There's things about media right now that I don't get. Brett, there's things that I don't understand. Why there's a generation that's crazy about watching somebody else play the same game that they own. I don't get it. I don't get it. They're watching people on YouTube kill this game instead of playing it themselves. I don't get it. Anybody, just let me vent for a few moments, okay? Listen, y'all get to vent. I don't get this opportunity all the time. But there's things that I don't like. There's music. I know I'm not going to like it. There's things that are not going to be my cup of tea. And the older I get, there's things in the church now that's not my cup of tea. All right? But you know what? There's some things that you just got to learn. First of all, it's not about you. We've got to get our focus back on Him again. We've got to get our focus back on what really matters in life altogether. And we've got to learn sometimes, where's them big lips? To shut them big lips up, that big mouth up, and not let your mouth get you so much in trouble. It did for the Israelites, man. They stayed in trouble all the time because of their complaining. You know, you just want to say, why did you have to say that? My biggest problem, if my mom and daddy ever watch this recording right here, they're going to love this, because my biggest problem was this. I was okay, Kevin. I did so good. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes, sir. But it was when I was walking away. I'm going to say, I'll tell you right now, I'll do what I want to do. I'm 10 years old. I'm a man of this house right now. What did you say? Boy, get back here. I had done it again. What am I thinking? And my mouth, and I look back and I'm thinking, there was some things I just didn't need to say. Oh, you've been there too. There's some things that I just should not have said. There's some things that should not have come out of my mouth. Listen, in other words, we're not going to go through life and pretend like everything's okay when it's not okay. It's not a sin to notice something that's not right. But when it boils into sin, might be when we complain about it and don't ever do anything about it. We have to understand something. Philippians 2:17. If you remember this, he's chained to a Roman soldier. He's awaiting his very possible execution. This is the Apostle Paul in prison. And this is what he says. But even if, I love that phrase. I love it. But even if I'm being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service coming from your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you. So you too should be glad and rejoice with me. Even if I'm being poured out like a drink offering, he says this, I'll still be glad. I'll still be glad. So how could Paul in prison, chained up to a Roman soldier, offer praise and worship to God? Let me tell you how he could do it. Ready for this? This is the neat part in life here. First of all, what we've got to do is to overcome our complaints is get our eyes off of our own circumstances. It's not about you. Amen? And quit focusing so much on you, and remember and look around. You know what? When we're in the church, you know what? Again, there's things that are not my cup of tea. All right? But we've got to get our focus back. When we're outside the church and we feel like we just want to grumble and complain, first of all, don't ever do it about the church. I'll whoop you in a New York minute. John will whoop you in a New York minute, right? All right. Everybody just kind of looked at me there for a moment. Micah gets you after that. I mean, don't ever complain about the church. But when you're outside the church, listen, you've got to realize, what has God blessed you with? Get your eyes on the blessing of God instead of looking at what I don't have and what is not as good as somebody else's. I love this. Paul in prison, chained to a Roman soldier, and he offers up praise and worship to God. Let me tell you how he could do it. Paul was not the center of his own story. Jesus was the center of his story. And there's a big difference right there. And because Jesus was the center of his story, that could take a negative circumstance and Paul could change his perspective about it in such a way that it would impact what God was able to do through the negative circumstance. Now hold on to that, because this is why Paul said this, and don't miss the power of what he says. He's chained up for 24 hours a day, a different Roman guard every 8 hours. Now you and I would think, come on, God, this is not right. I want to be behind a pulpit. I want to preach. I want to shout. Paul said, no. Paul said, I want an opportunity to make an impact in this city. I want to get a hold of Roman officials, and I want to change their hearts. And if I can change their heart, I can change the whole city through the word of Christ. I can do this. Just give me an opportunity. We would look at it as something to complain about. But Paul realized something. He says, you know what? Hold on a minute. As bad as this circumstance may be, this is not about me. This is about Jesus. And this is why Paul said this. And don't miss the power of what he says. He was chained up 24 hours a day, a different Roman guard every 8 hours. Here's a new one. 8 hours, here's a new one. 8 hours later, here's a new one. 8 hours later, here's a new one. What was that saying? Paul realized something. Wait a minute. God has blessed me with an opportunity that every 8 hours, I get 8 hours to share the love of Christ to every Roman guard that is chained to me. See, Paul looked at it in a different way. Paul looked at it in a way that I'm not chained to these guards. These guards are chained to me. And see, that began to change Paul's whole outlook on this. Here's what Paul says, and this is powerful. He says, I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me actually served to advance the gospel. So he's not complaining. He's changed his perspective, and he's seen the power and the goodness of God in it. What's happened to me has actually moved the message of Jesus forward. He says this, as a result, it's become clear through the whole palace guard, as these soldiers, as they did not know it, everyone else knows it. What do they know? They know that I am in chains for Christ. That I'm in chains for Christ is what Paul is saying. What was he saying? He was saying, you think that I'm in prison here? He said, let me tell you who's really in prison here. Every 8 hours, I get fresh meat. Every 8 hours, man, I love this. I get virgin ears every 8 hours of somebody who's never heard the gospel. And I get 8 hours to pour into their lives. Oh, here comes somebody new. Come on over here. See, they thought that they were torturing Paul. They thought that this was bad for Paul, but Paul says, come on over. Come on over here. I gotta tell you something. I got to tell you, listen, I don't know after those 8 hours were up, I don't know if they were like, get me away from this guy. Or they were saying, can I have 2 more hours? Because I got to hear what this man's got to say. I don't know, but Paul wasn't chained to them. They were chained to Paul. And one of the most powerful people in all of Rome chained up to my arm for an 8 hour sermon. Oh, I can't wait till Sunday. Man, I got you for 10 hours at least. All right? You're like, see, I'm out of here. There ain't no way. But for 8 hours, every 8 hours, for 8 hours, they were chained to Paul. And Paul was preaching the word to them. And he says, you think I'm a prisoner in here? You've got no idea how God is using what others would see as a negative to advance the gospel of Jesus. You have no clue. You got no clue. So what am I saying tonight? In other words, this isn't my plan. Some of you may be looking at your life right now and saying, but this is not how I orchestrated it. This is not what I wanted to happen. This is not what I intended to happen. Last year at this time, looking back, I would never have orchestrated this to be where my life is right now. But I'm here. I'm here at this point. I'm here at this time. This isn't my plan. This isn't what I would have chosen. There's a lot of reasons why I would probably complain about this, but because I can't change my circumstance. And see, some of you tonight, you cannot change your circumstance. It happened. You're in it. Paul couldn't change his circumstance. He couldn't change the fact that he was a prisoner. He couldn't change that. You can't change the fact that something in life has happened to you that you didn't choose. You didn't want it. You didn't want to go down that road. You didn't want to open up that door and have that. You did not choose this. So what do I do from this point on? You've got a choice. I can complain about it and focus and make it all about me. Or I can say, if I can't change my circumstance, I can at least change my perspective. I can at least change my perspective about the circumstance. I can make this thing work for me and not against me. Does that make sense? Are you with me tonight? Good, because that's all I've got for you. And it's important that you understand that tonight. It's important that sometimes, folks, that our mouth gets in the way. And for the Israelites, listen, it didn't stop for them. They continued on. And I got news for you. The next time when we talk about being critical, we talk about criticizing others, we talk about lying, we talk about gossiping, we're talking about our mouth and how we say things that get us in trouble. Just about every time we're going to go back to the children of Israel. And we're going to see, because there were times if nobody could keep their mouth shut, man, it was the people of Israel. They just seemed like, you just want to say you were ungrateful. But sometimes we got to look at our life and say, you know what reason do I have to complain about? If I can't change my circumstance, then I need to at least change my perspective. And I need to realize that, you know what, this ain't about me. This ain't about me. This is about Him. Do you realize how blessed we are? Do you really? Have you taken a moment just to kind of look at your life and realize just how blessed we are?